Just before we start, let's remind ourselves about stories. What can you tell me about a story? I'm Jenny Thomas and I'm the Grade 1 teacher at Emmanuel Christian Community School. So I have a class of 27 students, 18 speak another language at home. We are now using the EAL learning progression to monitor the students' language. I have created my own document where I am mapping the students so that I can see the range that they have in their language learning. Even though I have such a culturally diverse classroom, I always have the expectation that the students will meet the Year 1 Australian curriculum content descriptors, so I start there. Today we will be looking at stories and story writing, and the students will be engaged in telling stories and then moving on to writing their stories about Australian animals. So we'll start the lesson by discussing the characteristics of a story, and then we will put out our hoops into the structure of a story, and the children will then begin to step through their stories, telling their stories as they walk through each hoop, beginning with the characters and the setting, the problem, the events that take place, how the problem is solved, and then how the story ends. So here is our structure of a story. Who wants to have a go at telling their story using our structure? Who'd like to have a go? Tarksh, do you want to have a go?
Yes.
All right, let's see how you go.
Once there was a kangaroo. He lived in the bush.
Could you just go back for a minute, Tarksh? That's fantastic. Did you hear what Tark said? Once there was a kangaroo and he lived in the bush. Well done, Tarksh.
And he thought, I'm going to make my own home, and he can't find his home for make. And then he found the water, then he found the grass, and he thought, I'm going to make my home here. Then he made home there, and one kangaroo was finding his home, and another kangaroo said, come and live with me, and then they together live and share foods.
What a great story. Tarksh, that was fantastic. Tarksh is the boy who came from India. So when he came to our classroom, he had no English skills whatsoever. He has required a lot of support. Language has to be very explicit. It has to be modelled. And so we try very hard to make sure that he is understanding the tasks that are set. And we've seen a huge improvement in his English language, which has been great. I have got some story starters for you, and I'm going to show you what they look like. And this is set out just with the hoops, and there's no lines, and you can decide to draw your pictures on this one. Some of you might think, oh, I think I'd like to write some words. I think I'm ready to map out my story with some words. So there's this one here that's got some lines, and you can map out your words with this one. And some of you might say, I'm actually ready to write my story. So we've got some lined paper. So if you think you're ready to write your story, you can start writing your story. All right? Does that sound all right? To plan for this lesson, I used the Australian curriculum, and I went to the Year 1 content descriptors for language and literacy. And then I matched that with the EALD annotations. I found the teaching strategies very helpful because they were able to support my teaching and give me insight into what I might think about as I'm planning for this lesson. Let's write some words for your story, shall we?
One kangaroo live in the bush.
A kangaroo was living in the bush. So shall we write a kangaroo? My expectations for the student are the same. I believe in them and I want them to achieve at the standards that are set for Grade 1. And my job is to plan and use what I can to get them there. If we're going to work on checking our punctuation, our full stops and capital letters, remember we step into the hoop, and when we start our idea, what do we start with?
One.
A capital letter. And when we finish saying our idea, what do we do?
Full stop.
Okay, then we walk into the next hoop, and what do we do? Capital letter to start our next idea. And then a full stop to end that idea. Next one, capital letter, full stop, all right? So we're checking our punctuation as we go, all right? I build in opportunities for students to draw on their cultural knowledge through discussing stories and how stories are told in different cultures. That often stories are about animals in different cultures, and we've discussed that already when we've talked about stories in the past. We've talked about how different languages use what is the word for stories and what they mean in different languages. So we have covered that already, and this is the second part of that, which is the actual mapping and planning and writing of a story.